Hello and welcome to CoinGeek Conversations. My guest this week is the co-author of a recent article in the journal Genome Research called A Platform for Curated Products from Novel Open Reading Frames Prompts Reinterpretations of Disease Variants. I wasn't sure what that meant, so I tried reading the abstract, but the first sentence included the words proteomics and eukaryotic, so I left it at that. But the author is Robin Kohze, who is doing a PhD in genetics at Cambridge, where he's also the founder of the Cambridge University Metronet Society and now also the CEO of the Vianex Corporation, whose ambition, he says, is to become, quote, a globally recognized, best-in-class blockchain service provider. Well, thanks very much for talking to me today, Robin.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're listening to CoinGeek Conversations with Charles Miller.
Let's start, if we may, with your complicated life, with your genetics research, as well as everything else. How much time do you manage to spend on genetics with all this Bitcoin activity going on?
Well, probably still my 40 hours a week, but that wouldn't mean that the majority would not still go into my Bitcoin ambitions, which then ultimately means there's lots of work every week to be completed. It's certainly a challenging time.
It reminds me a little bit of when Bill Gates, Larry Page of Google, and Sergey Brin of Google, they were also all pursuing higher education studies when they started their businesses. And they all sort of said they were carrying on with the PhD or whatever to keep their parents happy, and the parents would be unhappy if they dropped out of doing the studies. Does that ring any bells with you?
I think what was unique about them was that they were early in their PhDs. Same with Elon Musk, by the way. He went to Stanford. If you're early in the PhD and you didn't invest much yet, then you might think, I can just focus on my company and just do it again in 3-4 years if it doesn't work out. If you're almost at the end of it, then you just complete it. And I'm very happy about the timing that I'm actually able to complete it. And it's worth the effort finishing it now.
But when you do finish it, will you go on to make use of it in the work that you do?
So what I specifically do is, I would describe my PhD as a pattern recognition PhD, just that's in the field of genomics. I'm finding the patterns that nobody has seen yet that might help us understand certain diseases, and also things that we have no idea exist. So someday we feel a bit better and some days we feel a bit worse. And is there maybe some molecular mechanism behind it? And can there be something studied? Is everything as random as we perceive it right now, or maybe not so much? And those are the patterns that I try to detect from all the noise that is going on in cellular environments. And from that standpoint, doing pattern recognition, Bitcoin, economy, all of those fields also deal with pattern recognition. Some try to find the pattern of a chart rising, some try to find a pattern of productivity, and therefore invest into that. So there's lots of applications, and I always try to keep my ambitions and my PhD aligned in those things that I need to learn to complete them, that I can always transfer the experience from one field to the next.
In looking for the things that cross over between these two fields, are you looking at the way that Bitcoin is governed by its software as somehow analogous to the way that a human being is controlled by genetic mechanisms?
So when you're in genetics, you realize it's a very complex structure that constantly interacts and changes There's not only the genetics, but also the epigenetics, those are the modifications on top of our genome, which is my main focus at the moment. But from that, what I mostly learned is that everything in the universe is limited, and what is limited needs to be managed, and managed by resource management, and that we do in economics, and that we do in our highly optimized cellular systems. Just that our economics is maybe now a few hundred years old, while our molecular systems are over a billion years old. So there is something to learn from both systems to maybe transfer what those systems might intend and how to achieve those goals.
The unpredictable element in the Bitcoin world is human behavior, I suppose, or in economics as well.
But you could argue the individual might be unpredictable, but the group of people itself is less unpredictable because they normalize themselves out.
Right.
But what fascinates me so much about Bitcoin, what I maybe translated from my biochemistry undergrad and epigenomics master, was how do we manage the interaction of billions of people efficiently so that everyone gets exactly the resources they need, which is a process that you also see in the cellular mechanisms where you have ATPs, for example, those are the energy carriers of our cells, and how they are exactly managed to provide energy to those systems that are most relevant to the fitness of the cell.
I'm interested in whether it makes sense to you, the idea that you will actually intervene in the world in an idealistic way to make things better, or whether you are simply sitting there like a scientist observing what happens and making some experiments with it. Does it make sense to you to say, I will try and make the world a better place?
I mean, it makes sense for everyone, right? So everyone is the hero of their own story. So I personally started with studying biochemistry because I really wanted to understand, why do we have those age-related diseases? Why do we have the cardiovascular diseases once we turn 60, 70? Couldn't we have a great life in our older ages and enjoy maybe having then a larger family instead of fighting with diseases? Then later I went to machine learning, since I thought maybe we can develop autonomous systems, at least with some agency, that support us in our daily lives, which have impact for everyone in the whole world, since it frees up so many resources. And with that same line of thinking, I also went into the Bitcoin world of saying, here we have a real opportunity to fine-tune, optimize how our worldwide economic system works, to better distribute resources, which ultimately will also save hundreds of millions of lives. I was reading in a book that every % of economic downfall will ultimately lead to millions of people dying of hunger. And we easily underestimate how important it is to distribute resources in the world efficiently.
Let's get back to the practical points now. At Cambridge, you started the Metronet Society, and from that has come the Vianex Corporation. And you've got a number of platforms that you're developing, and you've received venture capital investment. Let's just talk, if we could, about some of those projects within Vianex. The first one, which is sort of the easiest to understand, I suppose, is SatoLearn, in which you're offering courses to help people understand and become more expert in working with Bitcoin. And I've completed the wallet workshop, actually, which I found really interesting. And I mean, what was innovative about it, I think, is that you actually interact with the blockchain during the workshop itself, and real things happen on the blockchain. Tell me about your idea for that and how easy or difficult it was to make that work.
So everything that Vaionex is started with the Metronet Society, which is supported also by the Bitcoin Association. Ultimately, we did almost 2-3 events every single month with lots of people in Cambridge. We talked to people that knew about blockchain, people who didn't, but it always came down to the same question. So now that you have such a system, how can I make use of it? And there was always this barrier between convincing someone, or at least elucidating to someone what such a system might do to the world, and enabling those people to actually do it. And I saw there huge gaps that we experienced week by week. And I then came together with some other members of the Metronet Society, and we drew up plans. How could we overcome that? And then we combined the knowledge and experience that other platforms gained over time, such as Udacity or Codecademy. And we looked, what are the best features that they offer? And that's the interactivity that you mentioned. That is said, instead of having long texts and then having some questions, instead we want to keep things fully interactive so that you can learn the same and go away with the feeling that you can actually do what you learned right away.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was great because I never thought that I would actually be doing something in a program like that would actually interact with the blockchain. But I mean, was it easy to put that into a website as it is, or was that in itself quite a technical challenge?
It is technical, so it was certainly a three months process of getting to the state it is now. And then there are two aspects of it. First, you create the platform, and then you need to create the content within the platform. So while we progressed pretty quickly in creating such a platform that took maybe 2 months, it is a still ongoing process to really match the intended quality of all the lectures within Say to Learn. And maybe I can announce it here. We recently did a partnership deal with the University of Exeter to integrate the Say to Learn platform and our Say to Learn workshop within the FinTech master.
Oh, wow.
And students will learn from Say to Learn how to write applications with the blockchain, and then they get some additional training from various fields, and then they will be asked to create an actual product to be submitted as a master's thesis.
That sounds brilliant. There's an interesting business model built into Sato Learn in that you have these experts who the student can consult for certain amounts of money. So you built in a kind of marketplace inside the platform, which is quite innovative as well, I think.
Yeah, we said most people value their time a bit more than the money, especially when it's a time of frustration. When I have a university class, and I will also have a tutor around, that if I struggle, I can always reach out to that tutor. In this case, we have this mentor market integrated where you can pay from a few cents to maybe $2-3 for a session with a tutor. Session we define as 15 minutes. And it's an open competition who offers most value for which price. And even if you don't have any questions, you might still want to reach out to one of those tutors that you can pay a small amount of money to learn. Maybe when I create a platform and I want to have a slightly modified solution to the problem that I found on Say to Learn, then I might reach out to that mentor, a tutor, and ask him if he had any idea to do it. And that way we amplify the whole building process. And that is ultimately what the Metronet Society was about and what Vianex is about. It's about creating a funnel to bring developers and current non-developers, future to-be developers into the space, creating their own applications and reimagining what can be done in a world where you can have money as a protocol programming layer at a very low fee, which wasn't the case so far.
There's been a lot of talk about higher education being ripe for reform. Do you go along with that and feel that the traditional ways that higher education is funded and taught are a bit anachronistic?
I get multiple answers to that. So to my own undergrad, I almost never visited any lectures. Like I just said, I can learn it faster than you can teach it to me in a lecture. So I start 3 days before the exams, learning it from scratch. and then I will know it exactly as well as anyone else in the field. And finally, that proved me right by even getting to Cambridge in the end.
But you still had to pay a massive amount of money to go to Cambridge. And if you just did 3 days of...
I didn't pay a massive amount of money. I got scholarships for that.
Well, okay, but money changed hands on your account anyway.
In a way. And undergrads in the rest of Europe are 1/10 of the price that it is in the UK. You might criticize that a bit, that if I pay $1,800 a year for education, then that is a fairer amount for education, while spending 40,000 a year might be more business almost. And then you can, of course, say if you have two businesses and we teach you something more efficiently, then at least we are providing some competition on the price level. But I don't think we are truly a competition for the experience, because even though I could learn everything by myself without requiring any professor, I would still go to that university because it was an amazing experience. And especially in those fields I really wanted to be good in, I needed those professors to be around to guide me to challenging problems.
Well, also you met all the people that you assembled together in the Metronet Society, and they were sort of pre-selected as being pretty bright, I expect. And so you got some benefit just from the colleagues that you were able to assemble together for the Vianext Corporation, perhaps.
Yeah, and I mean, admittingly, I'm also using that position I have as a PhD student first to create the Metronet Society and say we can try to actually compete here, and not necessarily need to spend too much money since we had the connection to the right people. That all said, for a certain amount of equity, we would be totally willing to be part of the project.
So Sato Learn is part of a sort of bigger picture of Vaionex. What's the next step that will follow from that?
So with Sato Learn, we offer a learning opportunity, but we also want to offer a second way of getting into the ecosystem. And that is by introducing experienced developers to the ecosystem and provide them a platform that shows not only all the tools and services created so far, which is over 400 on the Bitcoin SV blockchain, but in addition also have kind of a dictionary or LinkedIn of all the developers in the ecosystem, all linked to their respective tools and their companies, so that you get a quick overview of who developed the currently leading libraries and protocols. And I think that will be uniting presence in the web that everyone can be led to. And it's a completely community managed platform. And we specifically try to be very impartial on that platform, that we don't prefer our own platforms or platforms that we like over other platforms, but rather that it's completely rearranged based on the amount of user clicks and the amount of interactions with those platforms. So I think we have a very, very fair solution for an exponential growing space. There you would find all the libraries you need as a programmer to program something, all these services. So we got plenty of services now occurring on MetaShard, for example, but also others like a MetaCloud from Attila. We got many services being presented on the CoinGeek conferences every year. So we just want to provide overviews of maybe all the token protocols that are available that you could use. There's this whole world of things to be discovered if you just know that they are there.
So you're making it much more efficient for somebody to come into BSV and quickly orient themselves and find what they need.
Yeah, because as we initially discussed, we want to be a significant infrastructure provider. And providing infrastructure only becomes meaningful once you have a sufficiently large community of developers that are actually building on it.
Right. Well, I mean, it's very impressive because you've already got these other platforms going. There's MetaShard, Raspura, API&Me, and Block Codes. At first glance, I would think they were each a separate startup company, but you've got them all going under the Vianex corporation umbrella. How did you manage to get all that happening at once?
Well, we were very ambitious in creating those platforms. I said we have the ability to create a full ecosystem, and that is an ecosystem that amplifies each other in a meaningful way, insofar that at first you have one account for all the platforms. You don't need separate accounts. Second, so you have the start funneling that the starting funnel where you learn how to do things with Bitcoin SV fundamentally. And then MetaShard, for example, is the Bitcoin data reading solution that you can create your own shard, which is a micro database where you can specify which kind of data from the blockchain you actually need to interact with for your platform. And then you can, at a very low cost, very efficiently interact with blockchain data. And then secondly, we have API&Me to create maybe solutions around the Bitcoin SV ecosystem or any other solutions that is meaningful to be commercialized, and combine it with our micropayments that you have maybe 1 or 2 cents per API request, and we can easily do that with micro and nano payments in the BSV ecosystem. And then on a third level, we have Block Codes. Block Codes is the coding marketplace where you can buy codes. For example, we currently sell their BlockScript, which is almost like a blogging platform, WordPress-alike, but instead of having a server that might cost you otherwise $20 a month, you can interact there with the blockchain and thereby have a fractional cost of that original WordPress costs, and you can still almost have the same experience. And I think to the user itself, we can even offer exactly the same experience after we put another year of development in it. And Blockcodes is a free marketplace where everyone can put in their solutions. And we are currently partnering also with Script by Xiaoyi to not only providing the Setulan classes, but also providing Bitcoin script solutions and implementations, adding them both to our wallet services that are now upcoming, as well as to block codes that we show many examples how you can actually use Bitcoin script to create a platform that users can interact with. So there's always many layers of developers that often not so much talk with each other, maybe less than they should. And with block codes, we can offer them for $10 the license to the full code base of how to integrate everything. And that's only a starting point. From there, you just start modifying it. You maybe switch out the smart contract, and then you can build any kind of platform within days compared to otherwise within months.
It's amazing. You sort of built a kind of BSV supermarket, really, with you can get everything in it. But let's talk a little bit about the wider vision for Bitcoin SV, because it seems to me that your work is focused on providing solutions for people who want to work in BSV. If this was the gold rush, you'd be the shop selling the shovels and the picks and things. But where do you see the mass of users and the money coming into the BSV economy? What is the best hope for that kind of breakthrough, do you think?
Well, the first thing that needs to happen is the recognition that there is a use of blockchain, and that use is not just speculative asset trading, but there's an actual use comparable to using databases. And that recognition is not widely there yet. Many would argue that you can use a private ledger, you can use a traditional database, or you push hashes to the blockchain. It's a very fractional aspect of what the blockchain could actually offer. And I think our bet as Vianex is that there's actually a similar use case than there is in today's world for databases, where every website you browse to is basically a database. But the blockchain is a different kind of database that offers unique features, such as the monetary layer on top of the internet, which we often refer to as the Metronet, and that's why it's the Metronet Society. I think there will be kind of a full new feature sets of things that can be done in the internet, and ultimately it will lead to a more efficient economic system by being able to create a new set of valuable platforms that enrich people's life for the interaction of maybe micropayments, or even it might be payments that flow back and forward. It just makes sure that the value added is equal from both sides of the interaction and trade there. And right now it's often a one-sided thing that either I get something, like you can say there's nothing really free on the internet, but often I get maybe a news article or a blog entry, and maybe I have my ad blocker on. So in the end, I'm more the one taking something from the one who created the content, but I'm not giving anything. So it cannot be a sustainable model for that person if he doesn't get anything for it. And then people started to create things like, let's block all the ad blocker websites, and that kind of added more friction to the whole internet. Now I always have to say deactivate my ad blocker, and if I deactivate it, then I instantly see 20 ads on each page. So there's kind of no balance in it, because those ads in itself, they pay very little. They get less than a fraction of a cent for every ad displayed, and at the end it's completely disrupting my experience reading up that quality content in the first place. So we need to develop some fairness there, and that will add the value to the world in terms of blockchain.
That's a fairly familiar argument, that people are fed up with seeing ads, or that they're worried about their data, personal data, being used by corporations in ways that they don't understand. But I'm actually not convinced that there is sufficient resistance or worry about that for people to want to go very far in looking for an alternative system.
So I would even say in the large view, it will not protect your data. It will rather do the opposite, because now I suddenly can commercialize your data way quicker. So we will rather see the opposite, that you become more transparent, which is like to the perceived disadvantage of the user, but it's probably to the advantage of the creator of products, because you can now better analyze what you want. And those people who want to pay for their privacy, they can always do it, but ultimately it's a very small fraction in the internet. You can see it from the numbers that use VPNs in the internet. It's very few people to care enough to even pay $3 a month.
Are you actually saying that the great thing about Bitcoin SV is that it's going to be able to get hold of more personal data from users than the internet can at the moment?
I mean, I myself like to be less exposed information-wise. So I think personally, I totally wouldn't want that. But ultimately, what microtransactions do is they reduce economic friction. So you can create all kinds of platforms and services around something that is very low in value, but it has a value. And those things are, for example, your information. That's one of the things. But there are many, many other things that has a value, like me sharing information, knowledge with you when you need it, instead of you searching the whole day for it. I might instantly be able to provide it to you. Other things are what I originally started with in the blockchain ecosystem, why I was so interested in it, was now we have a system of sales taxes where when you have an internet platform and someone buys something from your platform, you need to pay sales taxes to the country where it was bought from. And that is a huge paperwork effort, and most startups are either not doing it, or they almost spend as much as they're earning for it in the first place, and thereby reducing the ability of adding so much friction to the ability to create those small startups that interact with monetary payments. But as such, we can create Bitcoin smart contracts or predicates. So there's nothing truly a smart contract that can automatically split off the transaction into the sales tax that directly goes to the government and the product that was paid by it. So we could increase maybe efficiency there 100-fold in those systems, and thereby spawn a whole new generations of freedom in the internet towards what you're actually able to create while staying regulatory compliant. And at the same time, governments will profit massively from it, from instantly receiving their taxes.
That's an attractive vision of efficiency. I want to just end by asking you something about you and your colleagues at Cambridge, who are, I don't know whether most of them are in their 20s or basically younger people in the workforce. When the internet started and there were cyberpunks, and then later on there were cypherpunks who were interested in cryptography and stuff, there was a sort of anti-establishment idealism almost about the movement. And with Bitcoin SV, there's a lot of talk of it being legally compliant, and we love regulation. And I'm just wondering, it loses its appeal a little bit to young people who want to change the world when the sort of revolutionary cry is sort of, what do we want? We want regulation. It just... Is it actually slightly boring, some of the ideals that Bitcoin SV is aiming for?
You often have this activist thinking of once we replace something, it gets better. But usually if you replace something, then you get the second best option and then the third best option. And so I rather want to develop myself something that is actually competitive in a value way, that it's just better and the user will just use it over what the competition offers instead of saying, I want to replace you. So ultimately, I think we are fighting for our spot in the next generation of technology. And that's what is often referred to as the proof of work in the ecosystem, that everyone just shows what they can do without talking too much about what they will do soon in the future. So it's more about actually doing it and offering the value that then enriches everyone's experience.
Well, if anyone wants to look at your proof of work, they just need to go on the Vianex website and they will see the massive amount of projects you have underway. And thank you so much for talking to me today, Robin, and very, very good luck with all of those things, because I'm sure they're going to be brilliant. And I've already enjoyed the Wallet Workshop and will be looking forward to learning some more through Saturday Play. So thank you very much for talking to me.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much to Robin Kohze. And do check out Vianex if you haven't already had a look. There's some great courses, as I mentioned, and there's a whole lot of other resources there that they're building. Thanks for listening to this week's CoinGeek Conversation, and please join me, Charles Miller, again next week for another one. Till then, goodbye for now.
Data is one of the world's most valuable commodities. Tech giants and institutions have become richer by collecting and selling data. Data has the power to liberate, but has been used to manipulate. Data should be used to improve interoperability while securing privacy. Data sovereignty is most powerful when ownership is restored to individuals. But how can we speed up the flow of information while also empowering everyone to be more private, secure, and free? Join us at CoinGeek Zurich and learn how the Bitcoin SV blockchain ignites the power of data.